Let's it go!
The home of fearless basketball talk.
Violent reaction to the most improved player. I think that James Harden.
Opinions are respected.
You are delusional, my friend. Absolutely delusional.
And ridiculous statements.
Half Court Heave.
What?
This is the Half Court Heave Podcast, brought to you by the halfcourtheave.com and siteground.com.
On this Memorial Day edition of the Half Court Heave Podcast, we first want to say thank you to the men and women serving in the armed forces and who have sacrificed to protect our country. What's it go? How's it going, Juno? What's up?
I'm good. How about you?
Pretty good.
We're back after a long.
I know it's
long time.
been too long, way too long. Anyway, how did you find Game 3 of Miami and Indiana? Was this the type of performance you expected from the Pacers?
I think this was a long time coming. I think that they wanted to prove something, and they made a big statement.
Who are you talking about?
The Miami Heat. You saw LeBron James just totally destroyed Paul George after people were saying that it's Paul George was coming for that throne, from LeBron's throne.
A 114-96 victory for the Miami Heat over the Indiana Pacers in Game 3. Miami has retaken the home court advantage. Dwayne Wade had actually a good game. 18 points, 8 assists, shot 8 of 14 from the field. And I think was pivotal to Miami's win.
Yeah. You know, what I noticed from that game, I noticed that Miami didn't played the game, their style of play. You know, in games 1 and 2, if you notice, Miami was trying to play defense on Indiana, and it was causing them to play Indiana's style of basketball, which was the slow type of play. And in Game 3, you saw how Miami switched up their game plan, and they absolutely took it to Indiana in terms of offense. They were committing more on the offensive end rather than playing the slow type of play by defending. So they beat Indiana by mainly because of their offense, and they put up 114, right? 114.
Yes.
Yeah, they put up 114 points, which is indicative of how they invested a lot on their offense rather than investing in their defense, which would cause the game to slow down.
The Miami Heat shot 54.5% from the field in that game. Possibly one of the best games you can play as a team. And if you look at the box score, you have LeBron, Wade, and Bosh doing their thing. But then Haslem scored 17 points on 8 of 9 shooting. Mario Chalmers scored 14 points on 4 of 6. Shane Battier hit a 3. Basically, Miami got help from the other players, which is what they need to win the championship, which is, of course, their main goal. They can't just rely on LeBron, Wade, and Chris Bosh all the time. It's going to win you a few games, but ultimately these role players have to maintain that same type of consistency that they showed today.
And I think that the reason why the reserves were doing a lot better compared to games 1 and 2, because they invested more on the offensive end, and because LeBron plays a lot of defense, it causes them a lot of offense in the open court. Now, because they didn't rely solely on their defense, and they absolutely took it to Indiana on the offensive end. You saw how Mario Chalmers and Udonis Haslem were able to produce more, and that's what they need to be able to win the games and to win the series against Indiana.
What bothered me as well, the Pacers, you're a team that has just retaken the home court advantage, winning Game 2 on Miami's home floor. And then they come out with the wrong type of energy. They just came out flat out of the gates. And I don't know why that happened. Is it because they're a young team? If you're the Indiana Pacers, this was the game that you had to win to really prove yourselves that you've grown up. You're not the young kids anymore. You're not the underdogs, but you are legitimate title contenders. And to put up this kind of performance against a team like the Miami Heat was just absolutely unacceptable from the Pacers end.
And in terms of Indiana, it's not really more on Indiana's lack of urgency in playing Game 3. It's more of how Miami was able to exert their championship experience. Going into Game 3, a lot of people were expecting Indiana to take both games. There was a lot of pressure on Indiana, especially how they've been performing at home. And before today's loss, they were undefeated at home, going 6-0 in the playoffs. And a lot of people, because of their win in Game 2, expected them to win. And I think that affected them mentally, and it caused a lot of pressure that, we're at home and we need to win this game. And that ultimately doomed them. And coupled with Miami's intensity and how they wanted to prove the critics wrong, that Indiana had their number, and that's the reason why Miami was able to take advantage.
Well, if you're a team like Indiana, you can't make that excuse that the pressure's on you. Of course, there's going to be pressure in the NBA playoffs, especially in the conference finals.
Yeah, add that because they're young. They're very young, and that's the problem. You're young, and you have that pressure. It's different if you have experience like the Miami Heat. They've been there.
The Pacers have been here last year too.
Yeah, and
last year they won Game 3.
And this year they didn't because it's just, I think it's just pressure and youth. They're still young. They got to this position last year. They got it again this year, and there's still pressure in them, and they're still very young.
If you look at the stats of the Pacers, Roy Hibbert had 20 points, 17 rebounds. If you look at it on the surface, those are good numbers. But he only shot 4 of 12 from the field, 12 of 15 from the line. But he's got to make more field goals, especially in the paint. Paul George had a bad game, 3 of 10 shooting, only 13 points, 5 turnovers as well. Yeah,
it's indicative of their defense. Miami's defense. That's the thing. You notice that Indiana shot very poor today because it's mainly because
they shot under 40%.
Indiana thrives on the half-court set. They thrive on slowing the game, grinding it out. They're like the Memphis Grizzlies. I can compare them to Memphis, and Miami turned up the intensity in this game. They wanted to push the ball because that's the only way you can beat Indiana. If you slow the game down against Indiana, you're gonna lose. You have to beat them on the open court, and that's how they did it. And Indiana was forced to play Miami's pace, and that affected them, and you saw it in their shooting. And Paul George was terrible today.
Lance Stephenson. Let me just say something about Lance Stephenson. He shot 2 of 10 from the field, and in Game 2, down the stretch, he reminded me of a certain someone who we like to pick on our show. I think his name is Russell Westbrook.
Now you're hating on Lance Stephenson. How I hated on Westbrook.
Oh my gosh! The wild forays to the rim.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Westbrook. But Lance Stephenson, you really can't blame the kid. He wants to prove a point. He wants to prove that, he deserves to be in this position. And he's trying to do a lot of things more than what he is capable of.
He's trying too hard. He has to relax out there.
Yeah, but you really can't blame them. You don't really have any go-to guys in Indiana. You have Paul George, you have David West, you have Roy Hibbert, and George Hill. But aside from those guys, you really don't have anyone. You have Tyler Hansbrough off the bench. You have Sam Young off the bench, and they're not really reliable in offense. And Lance Stephenson is another guy that Indiana needs. He needs to exert himself, and he's doing it, but he's really just making very bad decisions on the court.
Let's go back to LeBron James for a moment. He was the one who, basically cost the Heat Game 2 with 2 turnovers late in the game. And I like what he did in Game 3. He took it upon himself to to lead the Miami Heat to a victory. He turned up the heat, no pun intended. And what I noticed about LeBron James is that he went to the post, which has been missing throughout his entire career. That post game just was not there early on. And it showed that he has been making improvements in his post game. And if he can do that on a consistent basis for one season, he can be the most unstoppable player that ever lived, given his skill set.
I agree very much. And yeah, LeBron, I've always said it and I've always pointed out how LeBron James is very, very good. Very awesome, actually. And the only thing missing in LeBron is I don't understand why he doesn't want to post up. He tends to drive to the rim. He tends to take it to himself rather than posting up his matchup. Because let's face it, LeBron James is a matchup nightmare, night in and night
Exactly.
out. No one can guard him one-on-one.
Exactly.
No one. You really can't point out anybody. And what he's doing now, he's doing the right thing. And if he continues it, yeah, he's going to be unstoppable.
And gone are those long contested jump shots that he always used to take before.
He's maturing.
Which will always be a miss. And I agree, he has matured as a player, as a person. And I think I still pick Miami to win this series. I picked them from the beginning.
Yeah, me too. Oh, I think only TJ said Indiana's was going to win.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the other series. What happened to the Memphis Grizzlies? What happened to that gritty team that we saw in the first two rounds? What happened to them?
Greg Popovich is the answer to that question. Memphis, San Antonio has had a lot of rest compared to Memphis. Memphis had to go through Oklahoma City. They had to go through the Los Angeles Clippers. And, the youth factors here now. San Antonio, with their experience, they're just willing. They're just exerting. They're just showing their will on Memphis. And Memphis has no answers. And I think the series is over. I called Memphis to win in 6, but I'm sorry.
Let me point out something first about, well, it's not happening in 6. Obviously, they're down 0-3. They have to win in 7. Let me point out something first about the Memphis Grizzlies. If you remember, they faced the Thunder. The Thunder didn't have Russell Westbrook, and yet the games were still close. The games were still close games. That means the Thunder are just such a good, talented team, and the Memphis just squeaked by, even though the Thunder did not have Russell Westbrook. Now you face a full-strength San Antonio Spurs team, and they're just being destroyed. I don't know why I changed my mind. I remember talking to you before this series started. I picked the San Antonio Spurs, and then when when we made our predictions, I switched over to the Memphis Grizzlies. I guess I got caught in the hype, I guess. But like what I pointed out, the Spurs' execution is just flawless. They know how to play as a team, and they are just dissecting that Memphis offense, especially in that overtime period. The Grizzlies had no answer for Tony Parker and Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan, he looks like the Tim Duncan of 7 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the thing. We're transitioning, if you remember, I pointed out 2004, Detroit won with that team offense. And now we are transitioning, and I hate to say it, we are transitioning from that team basketball that I've always said that it's a beauty to watch. And without a team without a closer, a team without a star player, in this era of basketball cannot win a championship at all. If you look at 2004, you said, they had a collection of very good players with Chauncey Billups, Richard Hamilton.
They had Billups. Billups was basically their closer on that team.
Yeah, right now in Memphis, I pointed out that when they traded Rudy Gay, I had some feeling that they might not be able to win it without Rudy Gay because you have Conley, you have Randolph, you have Gasol, but they're not really proven closers, and they don't really have any closer at this point. Yeah, they play very good. They play good defense, and they're very gritty. But in the playoffs, you really can't just rely on that. You really need a star player. And San Antonio, year in and year out has proven that. They've proven that they can win with a closer. Miami has obviously proven it with LeBron James, and Indiana's they're very team oriented, and you see they're losing because of the lack of star power, and that's what Memphis is lacking at this point.
If I was to pick a closer for Memphis, it would have been Mike Conley, but like you said, he has not proven himself yet.
No.
He can do it occasionally, but he's not someone who you can rely on to give the ball to late in the game and say, "Here, we're giving you the ball. Bring us to a victory." You know, I noticed that the Spurs played very good defense in that final play in regulation, forcing Mike Conley to his right. His right hand is very underdeveloped, and he was forced to shoot a very, very wild layup, which missed badly, instead of his usual left hand. And
Credits to Greg Popovich.
oh yeah, I guess he knew that.
He was weak going to
What?
the right.
Oh yeah, of course. And here is where the Grizzlies miss Rudy Gay, like you pointed out. He would have been perfect as a player to close the game against the Spurs, who he was the only person who the Grizzlies had who you could say, "Hey, here's the ball, will us to victory." The Grizzlies don't have anyone who can create their own shot, aside from maybe Conley. Randolph is just getting smothered in the post by Duncan and Splitter and whoever the Spurs are throwing out there to guard him. Marc Gasol is struggling as well.
I agree. You know, who I like in Memphis, and I've enjoyed watching him, is this guy named Quincy Pondexter. I like his shooting.
Didn't you see Quincy Pondexter's momentum-changing layup late in the game? He was against Tim Duncan, and Tim Duncan's presence was just enough to make him alter the shot, where his layup went to the front of the rim. He missed it short. He was basically blocked by the rim in his face. It was just horrible.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. They do not have any closer in that team. You know, Conley is not a proven closer, and Randolph and Gasol, they aren't either, and that's dooming them.
How great is it to have Manu Ginobili actually producing offensively? He had 19 points off the bench, seven of those points from the free throw line. He also had 7 points and 5 assists. Early in the playoffs, he was absolutely struggling. He couldn't hit a shot. To finally see him get going this late in the playoffs, to give the Spurs a commanding 3-0 lead, it bodes well for this team going forward.
It's a beauty to watch. Manu Ginobili, you gotta give a lot of props to him.
Of course. So today is Game 4 of the Spurs and Memphis. Can Memphis win a game? Can they force Game 5?
I think they're gonna force Game 5. I think that they're gonna win Game 5. They're gonna win Game 4, then they're gonna be closed out in Game 5. Sorry, Memphis fans, all those Memphis fans watching this stream. Yeah,
Memphis
you're
fans?
Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis, you're gonna win Game 4 for sure. I can bet on that. They're gonna win Game 4. They're gonna lose Game 5, unless Memphis has already folded and has already raised up the white flag and said, "Oh, we cannot win at all."
It'd be so sad to see Memphis just give up like that. I want to see them put up a fight, and I have the same sentiments as you do. I think Memphis is gonna win tonight and force Game 5 in San Antonio.
And they're gonna lose Game 5.
And they're gonna Spurs are gonna close them out at home. No doubt about it. Let's go to a bit around the
Spurs
NBA.
Heat finals.
Are you calling it Spurs versus who?
Yeah, I call Spurs Heat.
Spurs Heat.
That's gonna be a good matchup.
That's gonna be
Spurs, unbelievable. You're gonna watch that, and a lot of people are gonna watch that.
Let's go around the NBA a little bit. The Phoenix Suns have named a new head coach, Jeff Hornacek.
Yeah. I like Jeff Hornacek.
Hornacek is back in the NBA. And I think this is his first head coaching job, if I'm not mistaken.
Are you gonna react to how you remember? I remember a few episodes back when Jack Vaughn got hired, and you said, "Who? Jack Vaughn?"
Well, that was so random. Jack Vaughn. Hornacek is a more proven, and more known player than Jack Vaughn, and I think he's more than capable of being a head coach in the NBA.
It's gonna be interesting how he's gonna be able to transition from being a good, solid role player into a head coach. Because let's face it, not all players can be a head coach. Michael Jordan, he's the greatest player who ever played the game, but he can't be a coach. And I don't think Michael Jordan can ever be
a coach. He's too impatient to be a coach.
Yeah, Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant said he doesn't want to be a coach. Yeah, but that's the thing. Jeff Hornacek was a good player for the Utah Jazz during the Jordan era, and right now I commend him for choosing to be a head coach. But I haven't seen Jeff Hornacek yet. You pointed out he doesn't have any head coach experience, and that might be a factor. But who knows? Phoenix is transitioning out of the 7 seconds or less offense. And they're transitioning to a new era.
Do you remember when the Dallas Mavericks were championship contenders?
Yeah.
If you look at them now, it doesn't seem like only 2 years ago they were the champions. They look like to be 10 years removed from a championship.
Yeah, I agree. Dallas is. It's weird, Dallas. I find it weird that Mark Cuban chooses to spend his money getting these random players. I called it before the season started. I saw Dallas sign Darren Collison. They signed Chris Kaman. Those players.
OJ Mayo.
Yeah, I thought.
Speaking of which, OJ Mayo could have helped the Memphis Grizzlies right now.
The first thing that came to my mind when I saw Mark Cuban sign those guys is that you're playing a game of 2K. Like all your players were all declared for free agency, and you couldn't pick anyone, so you picked Chris Kaman. Mark Cuban, if you're watching this, why did you do that?
Well,
why the hell did you do that?
I bring up the Mavericks because Mark Cuban says that the Mavericks have a 2-year plan to return to contention. He says, "We want to be a championship team." This is quoting Mark Cuban. "We've never said we have to be a championship team this year. We want to be a better team, a top seed team. If we get the top free agent, that doesn't leave us a whole lot of flexibility to add a lot of players, but we have a good team nucleus around them. We know we'll have a good team, but we don't know if we have a great team. If you look at this 2-year plan, then we think we're on track to have a great team by the end of next year."
I don't agree with that.
Do you believe you? I don't sound It doesn't sound particularly assuring to hear Mark Cuban say something like that. If you're a Mavericks fan and you have your owners say, "We don't know if we're a good team, but we'll eventually be a great team."
I don't agree. I don't agree at all with that. You know why? I'll point it out. Okay. Dirk Nowitzki is 34. In 2 years, he's gonna be 36. Yes, we've seen Tim Duncan rejuvenated as he grows older. Dirk Nowitzki is different. Dirk Nowitzki has suffered injuries during the past seasons, and it's affecting his play. Yes, he might be better next year, but he's getting older. If you look at Mark Cuban's statement about saying that 2 years from now we're gonna have a 2-year plan to return to contention, do you think that they'll be able to pull that off? Especially given that Dirk is growing older. Dirk is gonna be 36 come 2 years from now.
Well, they're believed to be targeting Dwight Howard and Chris Paul in free agency, and I know they have the cap room to do that.
I don't think that Chris Paul will sign with Dallas, especially with Dirk Nowitzki aging. And Dallas doesn't have any guy, does not have any pieces at all. I don't have any trust in Elton Brand. I don't have trust in that guy. He was never the same guy from the Clippers days. He is on the decline. They're a collection of old players trying to be gelled together by this delusional owner saying that, I have money to get a couple of random guys off the street. Oh, Elton Brand, you don't have any. Elton Brand is on the decline. He's old, and Mark Cuban is this guy saying, "Oh, Elton Brand, you don't have any job. Come to Dallas."
You're amnestied. Come on, I'm gonna make a claim on you. Come here.
Chris Kaman, you're in the free agency. You're in the free agents pool. Come to Dallas. That's their mentality, and that's not really gonna work in trying to luring players. Dirk's gonna take a pay cut. So what? He's old. Yeah, he might be. He is still an elite player, and he's a future Hall of Famer. But come on, Dirk Nowitzki is not the same player from the 2011 playoffs with all those step back jumpers. He's not the same.
All right, I guess people might be complaining that we're going on for too long. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the Half Court Heave. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/the Half Court Heave. Our Twitter handle is @Half Court Heave. Thank you for watching episode 17, Memorial Day edition of the Half Court Heave podcast.